She is 18, Your Grace, and the contract is signed. She will be brought to Heatherby on Thursday, whether she weeps the whole way or not. Theodore Ashcombe, 5th Duke of Heatherby, listened to the girl's father say these words in his study and felt something close to sickness. Lord Rayther was a hard, ambitious, glittering man, and he spoke of his own daughter as he might have spoken of a mare he was selling, a good bloodline, sound, biddable, worth the price. Theodore had not asked for her weeping. He had not asked for any of this. He had asked for nothing at all his entire adult life, was precisely how he had come to be 36, unmarried and known throughout the county as the Unwanted Duke. Unwanted. It was a strange word to attach to a duke, but the county had found reasons. He was too quiet. He did not dance or gamble or keep a fashionable table. There was a stiffness in his left leg from a childhood illness that had left him lame, and he had heard, more than once, at more than one ball, the whispered verdict that no woman of sense would take a limping, silent duke when there were whole and lively lords to be had. He had stopped attending balls. He had stopped more or less hoping. And then Lord Rayther, deep in debt and hungry for a ducal alliance, had come to him with a proposal so cold-blooded that Theodore had very nearly refused it out of decency. He had not refused it. That was the thing he would have to make peace with. He had said yes. But he had said yes for a reason the girl did not know, a reason her father did not know, a reason he intended to tell no one until he could tell her, and even then only gently, only when she was ready to hear it. Only after he had proved to her by 100 small kindnesses that she had not been sold to a monster. I will not have her wept the whole way here, Theodore said. If she does not wish to come, I release her from it. I told you that at the start. I will not take an unwilling bride. Lord Rayther smiled the smile of a man who has already spent the money. She's a good girl, Your Grace. She knows her duty. She will not defy her father. There will be no weeping worth mentioning. There was weeping worth mentioning. Theodore saw at the moment her carriage arrived on the Thursday. In the great cold courtyard of Heatherby, saw the small figure step down in a travelling cloak, saw the white, set, terrified face beneath the hood, saw the way her eyes went up and up the grim grey face of the ancient house and found no comfort in it. She had been crying. She had schooled it, as a well-bred girl schools everything, but the marks were there, and Theodore, watching from the top of the steps, thought, I have done this. Whatever my reason, I have frightened this child half to death, and I will spend a long time undoing it if I am to undo it at all. Her name was Verity, Verity Rayther. She curtsied to him in the courtyard with a courage that broke his heart, a deep, correct, trembling curtsy, and she said, in a voice she was holding together by main force, Your Grace, my father sends his compliments, and I am come as agreed. You are welcome to Heatherby, Theodore said, as gently as he knew how, and you are cold and you are frightened, and I am very sorry for both. Come inside to the fire. Nothing is required of you tonight but to be warm. They were married 3 days later in the chapel of Heatherby, because the contract said they must be, and the license was bought, and her father stood at the front pew watching his investment mature. Theodore had wanted to give her longer. He had not been permitted longer. He stood at the altar in his good dark coat, leaning a little on the cane he hated, and watched an 18-year-old girl walk toward him to be married against her will, and he made her, silently, a vow that had nothing to do with the words the parson was reading. I will never once make you sorry you came up those steps, whatever it costs me, however long it takes. She said her vows in a whisper. She let him put the ring on her finger. And when it was done and the county's few curious guests had gone and Lord Rayther had ridden away with his contract satisfied, the Duke and his frightened child bride were left alone in the vast house of Heatherby, and the evening came on, and with it the wedding night that every soul in the county assumed would follow. Theodore found her in the fine chamber that had been prepared for her, the best in the house, aired and warmed, filled with hothouse flowers he had ordered up from the succession houses because he had noticed in 3 days that she loved them. She was sitting on the edge of the great bed, still fully dressed, her hands folded white-knuckled in her lap, waiting the way the condemned wait. She had wound her courage up to its highest pitch, and she was sitting perfectly straight, ready to endure whatever a purchased wife was expected to endure, and the sight of it, the sheer, dutiful, terrified bravery of it, made Theodore stop in the doorway with his hand on the frame. "Verity," he said, "Your Grace." She rose at once, and her voice did not shake, and he honored her for that even as it wrung him. "I am your wife now. I know what is expected. My mother explained it. I will try not to be a coward about it." Theodore came into the room slowly, leaning on his cane, and he saw her eyes flick to the cane and away, and he could not tell whether it was pity or fear or only exhaustion. He drew a chair to the fire, some distance from the bed, and he sat down in it, and he gestured to the chair opposite. "Sit down, child," he said. "Not there. Here by the fire. There is nothing expected of you tonight but to sit by a fire and hear me out. And when I have finished, if you wish it, I shall bid you good night and shut that door, and you shall sleep as safe and as alone as you did in your father's house. I give you my word as a gentleman, which I hope in time you will come to think is worth something." She did not sit at once. She stood looking at him, this grim, quiet, lame duke she had been sold to, trying to read the trap in his kindness, for she had been raised in a house where kindness always had a price. But there was a fire crackling, and there were her own beloved flowers on the mantel that he had somehow known to provide, and after a moment she crossed the room and sat down in the chair opposite him, and folded her hands and waited. "Good," Theodore said. He was quiet for a moment, gathering it. "You believe your father sold you to me because I am a duke and he is in debt. That much is true. I will not insult you by pretending otherwise. But I want you to know why I agreed, because it was not the reason you think, and I have carried it 3 days now, and it is time you had it." He looked into the fire. 6 years ago, he said, before the county decided I was unwanted, I attended the last ball I ever went to. I stood at the edge of it as I always did, because a man who cannot dance is not much wanted at a ball. And I heard a great many people that night remark on my leg and on my silence, and on how no woman of any sense would take me. I was making ready to leave. And there was a girl there, a very young girl, 12 years old perhaps, brought in to watch the dancing from the gallery before she was sent to bed. She saw me standing alone at the edge. And she came, all the way across that crowded room, this small determined child, and she made me a curtsy, and she said, "I have never forgotten it," she said. "You looked as though no one was going to come and talk to your Grace, so I came. I hope you do not mind. I think it is unkind of them to say things about your leg. I think you have a very kind face." Verity had gone entirely still. And then her governess came and swept her away, mortified before I could learn her name. Theodore went on, still watching the flames. But I did learn it afterward by asking. She was the small daughter of a hard, ambitious man who had brought her to the ball to be seen. Her name was Verity. He turned from the fire and looked at his wife. "I never forgot you," he said simply. "In 6 years of being the unwanted duke, I never forgot the one person in that whole glittering room who crossed it to be kind to a lame stranger she owed nothing. And when your father came to me this winter, ruined and desperate, offering his daughter to a duke to save himself, I asked her name. And it was you, the same Verity, grown and frightened and about to be sold to whoever paid most by the same hard man who had once brought a little girl to a ball to be looked at." His voice roughened. "So I paid most. I paid whatever he asked, not to own you, Verity. To keep him from selling you to some man who would not remember that you are the kindest soul I ever met. I told myself I would bring you here and be a friend to you and shelter you, and expect nothing you did not freely give, and if you never gave anything at all beyond civility, I should still count it the best bargain I ever made, because at least you would be safe and warm and no longer for sale." He set down his cane against the arm of the chair. "That is why I chose you. Not for your dowry, which was nothing, nor your blood, nor your looks, though God knows you have grown lovely. I chose you because a long time ago you were the only kind thing in a cruel room, and I could not bear to see the world grind that out of you." For a long moment Verity did not speak. The fire popped, her flowers glowed on the mantel, and Theodore watched something extraordinary happen in the face of the child bride who had come to this room braced to be endured, watched the fear drain out of it, slowly, like fever leaving a body, and something else rise to fill the space it left, wonder, recognition. And then, welling up despite all her careful schooling, tears, but not the tears of the courtyard, not terror. These were something warmer, and they spilled over, and she did not try to stop them. I remember, she whispered, the lame gentleman at the edge of the ballroom. I got such a scolding for it afterward. My governess said I had disgraced my father, running across the room to speak to. She stopped and laughed, a small wet laugh. To a duke, she said, as though that made it worse. I could never understand why it was wicked to be kind to someone who looked lonely. It is not wicked, Theodore said gently. It is the least wicked thing I have ever seen. It has kept a light burning in me for 6 years. Verity wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, a childlike gesture in a girl trying so hard to be a woman, and she looked at him, really looked, this time not at the cane, not at the reputation, but the man in the chair who had spent a fortune not to possess her but to protect her. You were going to let me sleep behind a shut door, she said slowly, on my wedding night, and ask nothing and be my friend and never tell me any of this. I was. Why tell me then? Theodore was quiet. Because you came to that fire, he said at last, though you were terrified. Because you did not run. Because I have watched you for 3 days find your courage over and over, and I did not think it right that so brave a girl should go on being frightened of the wrong thing. You were frightened of a monster, Verity. I only wanted you to know there is no monster here. There is a lame, quiet, unwanted man who has been in love with the memory of your kindness for 6 years, and who will wait as long as it takes, a year, 10 years, forever if it must be, for you to decide, freely and in your own time, whether you might come to be a little fond of him too. Verity Ashcombe, Duchess of Hatherby, sat by the fire in her wedding gown and looked at her husband for a very long time. Then she rose and crossed the space between the chairs, the same crossing, he thought, his heart in his throat. That a 12-year-old girl had made across a crowded ballroom 6 years before, and she stood in front of him, and she reached down and took his hand, the hand that had signed the cruel contract to keep her safe. You have a very kind face, Your Grace, she said softly, unsteadily, giving him back his own remembered words. I think it is unkind of them to call you unwanted. I do not find you unwanted at all. And Theodore, who had spent his life at the edge of the room, lifted a small hand and pressed it to his lips, and did not trust himself to speak. He kept his word that night. Bade her good night tenderly, and he took himself off to his own chamber, and he shut the door softly behind him, and Verity slept as safe and as alone as she had in her father's house, but not, this time, afraid. It was some weeks later, in the flowering of a slow, careful, blossoming spring. After long walks in the succession houses among the flowers she loved, after evenings by the fire in which the frightened child unfolded day into a laughing young wife, after Theodore had proved his 100 small kindnesses won by patient one, that Verity came to him of her own free will, and put her hand in his, and told him she was no longer fond of him a little, but very much indeed, and would he please stop treating her like glass, and let her be his wife in truth. And what passed between them then was theirs alone, and the door of Hatherby closed gently upon it, and the county, which had called him the unwanted duke, never did learn the whole of it. They only observed that the grim, silent Duke of Hatherby had somehow got himself the happiest marriage in 3 counties, and that his young Duchess had a way of crossing any room, however crowded, to come and stand at his side, and that he watched her do it, every time, as though he could not quite believe his luck.